Hello everyone, and welcome to Recap V. Today, we'll be talking about a movie called The Death of Stalin. The Death of Stalin is a 2017 political satire black comedy film, written and directed by Armando Iannucci, and co-written by David Schneider and Ian Martin. The film depicts the internal social and political power struggle among the Council of Ministers following the death of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin in 1953. Watch out for spoilers and let us begin. The movie starts in Moscow in 1953, as we hear a song being played at a concert. A phone call is heard on the Moscow radio headquarters, and it tells them to call back in 17 minutes. The phone call was from Stalin, and the scene cuts to him, as we see him listening to the song from the radio, and reading his list of the people he wants dead. He then orders his men to do what they do best, the Great Terror. The radio station calls Stalin after 17 minutes, and he tells them that he wants a recording of the concert. The director asks his co-workers if they recorded it, but they hadn't, so he tries to make everyone sit back down and play the concert again. Meanwhile, Stalin has dinner with Central Committee members Molotov, Malenkov, Khrushchev, and Beria, head of the NKVD. We see Stalin and them making some unfunny jokes trying to not get in his bad vibes, which Malenkov seems to be failing. And then he makes them watch a cowboy movie, which they seem to have already watched, and not just once. We go back to the concert and we see that half of the audience had already left, so they go and take people from the streets and their homes. As everything is being prepared, Maria Yudina, the pianist, says she won't do it again, so the director takes her to the studio, and manages to convince her, by bragging her with 20,000 rubles. We then see the NKVD taking people out of their homes to send them to Siberia, as family members seem to give up their families to save themselves. Meanwhile, on the other building, we see the Moscow radio's workers going around and taking people to the concert. We then go back to Stalin's committee members as they seem to be leaving to their homes, and advising Malenkov to write down what he said tonight that made Stalin angry or happy, so he can know what to say and not say. After this, as Molotov is leaving, Beria says he's forever goodbye to him as he tells the others that Molotov is on the list. We are then sent to the concert as it ends, and as the director goes to give the recording to the officers waiting, Maria puts a letter she had written to Stalin. Once alone, Stalin puts on the recital and discovers the note. He reads it and laughs hysterically, before suffering a stroke. His guards hear him fall, but do not investigate out of fear, and he is only discovered the next morning by his housekeeper. The members of the committee rush to the dacha. Beria gets the news, and starts going there as he and his officer are making some jokes about the women he forced himself into. He manages to arrive first, finds the note from Yudina, hides it, and then steals some documents. Malenkov, who is Stalin's successor, arrives next. He begins to panic, but is calmed down by Beria, who secretly plans to use him as a puppet. Next to arrive is Khrushchev, who is joined afterward by the other committee members, Lazar Kaganovich, Anastas Mikoyan, and Nikolai Bulganin. They then take Stalin's body to another room and lay him on a bed. After this, they decided to get a doctor, but the problem is, that all the good doctors are dead, or in the gulag. So they decide to find a woman who knows most of the doctors and their whereabouts, and then say that if something bad happens, they can blame it on her. We then see Khrushchev plot in a plan with Kaganovich on taking down Beria. After this, Svetlana Alliluyeva, Stalin's daughter, arrives at the place, and the members of the committee race to greet her first. Inside, even though scared to talk, the doctors explain what has happened, and say that he won't recover. The committee members act sad in front of Alliluyeva, and then Beria immediately has the NKVD take over city security duties from the Soviet army. After this, we see Khrushchev talking with Svetlana, trying to get her in his side, which he seems to be failing miserably, but Mikoyan rushes in and tells them that Stalin has woken up. They all rush there, and act like a bunch of kids, they command for some water, and Beria goes into the corridor to relieve some of the anger he has in him because of Stalin's awakening. Although it all fades away when Mikoyan shows up to tell him that Stalin has passed away. After this we see the doctors opening Stalin's head, and the others being disgusted by it. And then Stalin's son Vasily Stalin comes in angry at everyone as he starts shooting like a madman. But thankfully, the guards manage to hold him till his sister comes to calm him down for a bit. Till he goes after a guard's gun. After taking care of him they start going to Moscow. As soon as they leave, some soldiers come in and they start cleaning up the place, do a real cleanup. After this we see Beria freeing Molotov's wife Polina Zemchuzina, who he was supposed to kill. We also see him preparing a young girl for his pleasures in the evening. We then go to Khrushchev, who tries to convince Molotov to join his side, by telling him that Beria had put him on Stalin's list. But then Beria shows up with Molotov's wife, surprising them both. After this, he goes to the committee convenes and names Malenkov premier, as stated under the Soviet constitution. However, he is largely under the control of Beria, who uses him to better his own position. As a result, Khrushchev is sidelined and put in charge of planning Stalin's funeral. Beria suggests introducing the liberal reforms that Khrushchev had wanted to implement. While Stalin lies in state, Beria earns more popular support by releasing political prisoners and loosening restrictions on the church. However, he is challenged by Marshal Georgy Zhukov, who is infuriated that the Soviet army has been replaced by the NKVD. He and Khrushchev are further incensed when they learn that Beria has stopped all trains into Moscow. Beria, however, learns that Khrushchev is acquainted with Yudina, who is going to play at Stalin's funeral. He thus exerts influence on Khrushchev by threatening to reveal the contents of Yudina's note. In retaliation, Khrushchev approaches Zhukov to obtain the support of the Soviet army in staging a coup against Beria. Zhukov is open to the idea but only if it has the full support of the Central Committee. Khrushchev begins to undermine Beria's popularity by ordering trains to re-enter Moscow. The NKVD security forces are overwhelmed and massacre 1,500 mourners. The committee suggests blaming junior NKVD officers. But Beria opposes this because he believes his association with the NKVD will tarnish his reputation. He angrily threatens the committee with compromising material. Molotov, enraged at the rapprochement with the church, secretly meets up with Khrushchev and Kaganovich offering his support for disposing Beria if there's unanimous consent. On the day of Stalin's funeral, Khrushchev lies to Molotov and Zhukov that the committee unanimously supports action against Beria. Zhukov informs his men, who relieve the NKVD at their posts and arrest Beria. Khrushchev coerces Malenkov into signing Beria's arrest warrant. At a hasty trial, Khrushchev and his allies accuse Beria of sexual assault, rape and pedophilia. Khrushchev sentences Beria to death, and in an ensuing struggle, a soldier shoots Beria in the head. As Beria's body is burned, Khrushchev gives Svetlana a ticket to Vienna and assures her that her brother, Vasily, will be cared for. Afterward, Khrushchev, Kaganovich, and Molotov agree that Malenkov is unfit to lead the country. Several years later, Khrushchev is now the leader of the Soviet Union after removing or demoting his co-conspirators. He attends a concert by Yudina. Meanwhile, his future successor Leonid Brezhnev intently watches him from the row of seats above. And this is where the movie ends. Hope you all enjoyed this recap. Make sure to leave a like, comment on what you think about it, and don't forget to subscribe, so I can make more recaps of movies, TV shows, animes, etc. See you all on the next video.